The first part of our journey out of Leeds sees us on the Air and Calder navigation all the way to Wakefield, a journey of about 18 miles. Improvements on the Air and Calder navigation were first made in 1704, when the Air was made navigable to Leeds and the Calder to Wakefield, with the addition of 16 locks. River Lock is the last lock on the Leeds and Liverpool Canal before we join the Air and Calder.
As we come out of the lock, we join the River Aire. We're struck by just how wide it is, and it reminds us a little bit of being on the Thames last year.
The locks on this part of the navigation are huge, big enough to take much larger vessels, and they're all electrically operated. The control panel is relatively easy to use, as long as you follow the instructions.
As we approach Castleford Junction, we prepare to say farewell to Mark and Catherine as they head towards the River Trent. We, however, will turn right and head towards the Calder and Hebble.
We've cruised the entire Leeds and Liverpool Canal with them for over a month, and their lovely dogs, Stan and Dexter. We wish them a safe journey and hope that we meet up with them again soon.
Stanley Ferry Workshop is one of only 2 sites in the UK that make lock gates for the Canal and River Trust.
Whilst almost 100 individual gates are made each year, each gate is unique and measured to exact specification. Lock gates have to be incredibly strong. They hold back huge water pressure and spend many years underwater. They are made from green, sustainably grown oak and will last typically up to 25 years. Broadreach is a really good example of a flood lock. For the majority of the time, the gates are open, as you can see here, but in times of high rainfall and a risk of flood, they can be closed quickly to protect the canalised elements of the river. The Fall-in lock at Wakefield marks the end of the Ayr and Calder navigation and the start of the Calder and Hebble. This navigation runs from Wakefield to Sowerby Bridge, a distance of about 22 miles, and meets up with the Rochdale Canal. The Calder and Hebel navigation is almost unique in that it requires a special hand spike to operate the paddle gear on some of its locks. Here you see me getting to grips with a hand spike lock in Wakefield. I have since learnt that I was using it upside down. Every now and again there are stark reminders that we are indeed on a river. The debris on these trees shows just how high the river level has been in the past.
What we have to worry about in these short locks is catching the tiller on land.
Which we did 3 or 4 days ago.
Yes. Fortunately, very minimal damage, very slightly bent the tiller arm, but doesn't seem to have affected its movement at all. But it is so, those platforms there that you stand on to do those paddles are right at the wrong height.
This is the actual lock where the incident with the tiller pin took place, and here is the offending walkway that caused the problem. I'll say a little bit more about the length of the locks when we reach Sowerby Bridge. All along this navigation you were continually switching from river to canalised section. The approaches to landing pins when you are leaving the river are easily missed. Battyford is a really good example. Once you've negotiated the landing pins, you then typically have a very sharp turn to get into the lock. At the exit of every lock that takes you from a cutting back to the river, there is a strong stream warning sign. Just above the water level, at the gate exit, you will see a red and orange and green strip. This is your measure for whether it is safe to proceed. How many feet has it taken to wear the step in this way?
Whilst together with Catherine, she taught me how to make sourdough bread and shared some of her starter with me. Here's one of my first attempts.
On a very rainy Saturday, we approach Salter Hebel and encounter our first guillotine lock. This guillotine is clearly much slower than that used in the French Revolution. The wharf and basin at Sowerby Bridge became important because it was where the Rochdale Canal and the Calder and Hebel navigation met. The short locks that we talked about earlier on the Calder and Hebel were built for Yorkshire keels. Yorkshire keels are only 57 foot long, so the locks are only 60 foot. Consequently, any item brought down the Rochdale Canal on a larger vessel had to be placed in a warehouse here at Sowerby Bridge and switched onto a smaller craft. Another example of the impact of rival canal companies. Whilst we were moored in Sowerby Bridge, we decided to walk to Halifax, despite the steep hills. We were rewarded with a really wonderful town. At the heart of Halifax is the wonderful Peace Hall.
It opened in January 1779 and has 315 separate rooms arranged around this quadrangle.
The rooms were used by local producers of woolen goods and worsted to ply their wares. It was thought that bringing the buyers and the sellers together would help produce a very efficient market and dissuade fraudsters. The sellers would display their pieces, hence the Peace Hall. Today it is full of lovely independent shops, cafes and restaurants.